Well, welcome to our number 5 Leaders Lunch and Learn in our volunteer engagement series of 6 sessions that we started 5 months ago. So thank you for taking the time to engage with this training video. And really more importantly, you're getting this and you're watching this because you're a team leader that cares about people, that wants to do significant ministry, a sense of deep purpose in your own life as you serve and help other people learn to serve. Part of the big teaching, especially of Paul in the New Testament, is that everybody belongs. Everybody has a place. He uses the illustration of a body with lots and lots of moving parts, like our physical bodies. And our bodies are made up of lots of parts, eyes and ears and nose and teeth and internal organs. And Paul's really big, and Jesus created us in this way, that we would use our gifts, use our talents to serve other people. And as we do that, our life takes on significance and meaning. And so we want to further equip you, particularly as team leaders, in your involving other people and building teams at Crossroads, because strong, healthy teams are a great experience for people. The statement, people want to go to church where people want to go to church. Well, I think it's true of teams. People want to be on teams of people who want to be on teams. And so that's what these installments are about. And this, like I said, this is number 5. We've been going, every month we've had a different video that we're recording it on YouTube so you can view them later. So thank you, whether you're engaging live today or whether you're watching this later, thank you for engaging. And so today's topic, and they're short, these are 15 minutes of content and then discussion. And so each video will be relatively short. Rod Kaya, Ryan Howell, myself are doing the training. So we're thrilled that you've joined us today. And so it's me today for you. And the topic today, I'm going to switch screens here so I can look at my notes. The topic today is setting expectations high and early. How can we onboard people in a way that helps set things right from the start? And this is the premise that we're going to talk about today, and you'll hear me repeat it over and over, is it's easier to take away than it is to add. And that will become clear as I talk a little bit more. We've all taken classes in high school or college, and what happens on the very first day of class? The teacher walks in, the person hands out the syllabus, right? And so, like, for instance, I was in grad school, and so a first day of class would often go like this. For this class, if you want to get a good grade, you got to read 400 pages in the textbooks. You have to write 2 papers that are 15 to 20 pages in length. You'll take 3 exams, and of course, behind the explanation of the exams, the students are always asking, will the professor drop the lowest grade of the 3, right? Sometimes professor would do it, other times no. And then there's a final exam. And what's the big question about the final exam? It was always this: is the final exam comprehensive? In other words, will it cover just the last 25% of the class if there's 4 exams? Or will it cover the content from the whole class? And sometimes we know, if a professor would say, if you've maintained an A grade during the rest of the class, you won't have to take the final. I mean, there's some incentive. And then on the syllabus would also be the weekly quizzes. How many? When would they be? What portion of the grade are the daily quizzes? How many can I miss? And then, of course, there's always a question about class attendance. And it seemed like this question would always come up. Not how much class can I attend, but how many classes can I miss and not have it affect my grade if class attendance was mandatory for a certain class. And this was always interesting to me. The underlying question that seems ubiquitous for all students, high school, no matter where you are in your education, was, what is the minimum amount of work that I need to do to get an A or to get a B or whatever grade it is you were shooting at? How much can I miss? Is a 90% an A? Is an 88% an A minus or a B plus? And when I was in school, I always notice this about myself as a pattern, especially in grad school. I think, what is it in me that does this? I mean, I'm paying all this money and spending all this time. And when I went to grad school, I had kids and I was working. And so I'm taking priority time away from other important things to get the best education that I can. And the very first day of class, the very first hour of class, I'm already asking, how much class can I miss? How many quizzes or exams do I have to take? How can I get the best grade with the minimum amount of studying, reading, or learning? I don't think there's a did you do that? Was that your approach to education for any of your classes? I don't think there's a formal name for this student syndrome. Let's call it a student syndrome. But for our time today, I'm going to call it the law of the minimum effort. The expectation bar is set here, like a pole vaulter. What do I try to do is just skim over the bar, barely clear the bar so I can, make it. I mean, why isn't it that if the bar's set here, why don't we aim for higher than the bar or this or that? So the application for us today as team leaders is when onboarding new people, encourage people with the breadth and the depth of the responsibility to see how far they can stretch. And by doing so, it gives an initial picture for their capacity, long-term potential development. We can always, and here it is, take away responsibilities as needed. Here it is again. It's easier to take away once you set the expectation than it is to add. It's easier to set the bar high and then lower it if we need to than it is to start with a low bar and then raise it. I mean, to use our school analogy again, how would students respond to the professor if halfway through the class the professor announced that there was an additional paper and an additional exam due before the end of the semester? I mean, how would students respond? I mean, it might be mutiny because it's very difficult to add. But what if halfway through the class, the professor announced that there would be one less exam and that the 20-page paper, the two 20-page papers only had to be 10-page papers? What would happen to the classes? I mean, they'd be hooping and hollering. It's easier to take away than it is to add. So how does that relate to our volunteer teams? Well, this instance, it speaks of how we recruit and onboard, particularly new people. We can get really unclear and sloppy onboarding people with the best of intentions. I mean, I've done this. You see someone new, you got to know them a little bit in the atrium, and you're thinking, wow, that person would make a great addition to our, they're friendly and outgoing, maybe our greet or our auditorium usher team. So I'll just say, hey, why don't you join our team? And they go, oh, okay. And they'll say, I'll give it a try. So you sign them for next Sunday and you tell, hey, meet me in the atrium next Sunday and I'll kind of show you the ropes. So the next Sunday they show up. There's no communication during the week. They show up, right when they normally show up, like 2 minutes before the service. And they look for you. And you're already, let's say you're an auditorium host, team leader. You're already, opening doors and making sure people are seating and making sure people are at the doors, handing out programs, make sure, and this new person shows up and you really don't have time for them much. So you stand them by a door and say, hey, hand out programs and be friendly. So it's a very, so at the end of the day, you circle back with them and by now the service is over and, they kind of showed up, they're kind of deer in the headlights. They're a little confused about what they were supposed to do. And if you said, hey, you're going to be around next week, you want to do it again? This volunteer who was eager and willing and probably teachable is now a bit confused and probably would say, you know what, let me give it a little thought. And that might be the last time they try this for quite a while. So there's really challenges to onboarding people well. And even the whole concept of building teams. Again, I think the challenges of growing our teams has actually increased in the last few years, especially with COVID and the people's response to even attending church. For instance, church attendance in 2019, according to these surveys and studies they do, 34% of Americans attended a religious service at least once or twice a month. So 34% of Americans. In 2020, it fell to 31%. And in 2021, COVID year, it fell to 28%. And the 28% that are attending church are only attending 1 or 2 times a month. So now we're building teams with people who show up to church, 30 sometimes a year, maybe it's a dozen times a year. And we're trying to build volunteer teams in this environment. And post-COVID attendance, across the board, church attendance is down 25%. So we have fewer people who don't attend services nearly as often as they used to. So how do we build teams in this environment? Well, I think here's some adjustments. For instance, the age of having volunteers serving on a weekly basis, like 52 times a year, that's no longer the norm. I mean, I don't know if that ever was the norm, but that's not the case anymore. Or having even people serve consistently every week when they attend a service, if it's a weekly service spot of volunteering. They don't want to volunteer every time they come. They don't want to come early. So if your average attendance is once or twice a month, now their times of serving are even being reduced to less and less, to maybe 12 times a year. So in that environment, as team leaders, and I think that's true across the board, generally volunteering, we have to adapt to make serving more accessible and more practical for people in this environment. So here's some ways to do that. First of all, rather than, I think the way we can do it is say, hey, can you serve twice a month? Would you serve, instead of once a week, could you serve twice a month? And in some instances, probably many instances, now we give people the opportunity, hey, would you do this once a month? So we've gone from 52 to 12. And there's a lot of wisdom in this approach, because I think people are more willing to take a baby step to start with. But there's also, I think, the danger of having these teams that are just built of a hodgepodge of people who show up whenever they want to. And so that's what we're talking about today. How do we set the expectation early and high so that people understand what the ideal would be, and then we adjust from there. And I think particularly of kids in the kid spaces, serving every other week instead of every week can be a real help to a lot of volunteers. Because then it allows them to, for now we only have one service on Sunday, it allows them to attend actually a church service every other week, and it keeps them fresh. But the other advantage of that is the kids will have a consistent person, in their life that's there to see them and greet them. So I think, again, we're talking about an art form here rather than a formula. And we can get ourselves in trouble by offering the twice or once a month option right up front, because if we aim for the minimum, if we aim for twice a month, people will typically come in under this. I mean, remember, it's just human nature to come in under the minimum. If this is the bar, oftentimes people will come in with less. So no matter where we set the bar, the final landing place will often be less. And in fact, I asked a sociology professor who's just recently retired, I asked him today, he taught university, college, and graduate classes for years and years and years in California. And I asked him, I said, what percentage of the students, and this isn't a scientific survey, but what percentage of your students came into class desiring to excel, desiring to go above the expectation? And what the answer was, what would your guess be? He said 5% to maybe 7% of students' aim was to exceed the bar. So here's the application for us. Instead, when we're onboarding a new person, we offer the ideal. We offer the ideal scenario where we would love to see our volunteers serve, let's say, even weekly. Say, hey, if you were serving on a weekly basis, then this is what it would look like. And so we start with the weekly, or I think even the ideal sometimes is twice a month, and then we back off from that if necessary. But because we have this idea in our back of our mind that more is harder. But the truth is, while more does seem harder at first, more often builds rhythms and habits into people's lives. More, and I think this is the essence of teams at Crossroads, is that more grows relationships among team members. The more often people serve, they have a greater sense of belonging. They have a greater sense of I'm needed if I don't show up. And they have a greater sense of community and ownership, and they just feel more a part of it. You'll hear people who begin to volunteer change their language from your church or that church to my church, our church. And so that's the advantage of starting and setting the bar high. And then if you need to, back off from it. We're onboarding some people right now on our Partners in Hope leadership team. And one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to sketch the ideal. This would be the ideal experience for someone on our leadership team. And then if someone says, oh, I'd love to do that, but I can't be here for that event, then we can, in a sense, start the negotiation process. So that's kind of the content. So here's some very practical things. When we're onboarding a new person, first of all, provide as much information up front as needed, but not too much so that it overwhelms them. In other words, they need some information to be informed, but they don't need so much information to be overwhelmed. And I'm the director of volunteer engagement at Crossroads, and I think every volunteer, no matter where or how often or what they're serving, deserves three things as they're being onboarded. First, they deserve a written ministry description. And you as a team leader need to provide this for every new person on your teams. They deserve a written ministry description. What am I being asked to do? The second thing that they deserve is a conversation that walks through the ministry description prior to them committing to being on a team. And so normally this would be the team leader. And that conversation could happen after you give them the ministry description, could be emailed or handed to them. It could be a phone call. And it doesn't have to be long. It could be 10 minutes to say, hey, I want to touch base about the ministry description that I gave you so you understand what it means to be a part of this team. And this is where you set the bar. And it could be in a conversation after church service. Hey, can you stick around for 10 minutes? I'd like to go over that ministry description so that I can answer any questions and explain anything that's not clear from ministry description. So every volunteer deserves three things. One, a written ministry description. Second, a conversation with the team leader explaining the ministry description. And third, I think every volunteer deserves a test drive experience. Rather than just saying to everybody, hey, join the team now, say, come and give it a try. All right, so have the potential volunteer shadow one of your best volunteers. All right, and that might be you, so you can explain everything. So those are the three things. So have them try on the experience. So for instance, if you're a greeter or a host team, or you're in a kids ministry position and you're going to be a classroom assistant, just tell this person who's thinking about it, hey, come visit next week. Come try it on. Follow me around. Ask questions. I'll explain to you what I'm doing and why I'm doing it and what's expected. It's that picture is worth 1,000 words. An experience of a test drive is worth 1,000 words. So every volunteer deserves those three things. And in that ministry description, we want to be clear about what's expected of them. Like, for instance, the time commitment. What time do I need to show up? When am I going to be finished? The role responsibilities. Exactly what am I going to be doing? Am I going to be standing at a door greeting people? And are we handing out programs? And am I going to be planning or executing an event? Am I going to be running a camera? What if I don't know? So in that ministry description, the role responsibilities would be delineated. How they can expect to be communicated with. Do we communicate on this team by email? Do we text each other? Is there a Facebook group? How often? And then meeting attendance. Like, does our team have monthly meetings? Do we have regular meetings? Will there be extra meetings? If we plan an extra meeting, is there any expectation that I'm going to have more meetings than the one that's listed on the ministry description? And so you start by setting the bar clearly. I think you can start by setting the bar high. By this is what the ideal team member would look like. And then you can move down from there and in a sense, negotiate. Like, for instance, last year we had a person that we were inviting onto our Partners in Hope leadership team. And she said, I'm in, I'll do everything I can do ahead of time, but I cannot attend that event. And attendance at this event was one of the requirements for being on the team. And so she said, I'll do everything I can up front. I just cannot be at the event. And so at that point, as a team leader, we can decide if that's going to be okay for the rest of the team, for this person to miss an event, a major event. And so we want to be upfront. We don't want to overwhelm with too much and unnecessary information. But we want to give them enough information to get them started. Now, this, you'd think a greeter, well, anybody would know what a greeter does, but some people don't. Maybe some people have never volunteered for any organization ever at all. So here's another application. When recruiting new people and onboarding new people, don't assume anything, because this might very well be their first opportunity in volunteering in any capacity. And sometimes I think we forget what it's like to be a new volunteer. We've been team leaders, we know what it's like. We forget that they have these questions like, am I good enough? What if I can't do what's being asked of me? What if, you fill in the blank. What if people don't like me? What if I'm late? What if I show up to the wrong place? What if I have to miss something? And so, I like what Rud Kaya says, who's normally doing these things. He says, people are much more competent than they are confident. And clarity, ministry descriptions, role responsibilities, exactly what time do I need to show up? What am I going to do? Clarity lowers the anxiety level and brings confidence to a new volunteer. And the fruit of this whole process is that people know what's being asked of them and know what's being, and you as a team leader know what you can expect from each team member. So a person knows what's being asked of them. They're clear about it. And you as a team leader know that this person says, hey, I can be there 7 out of 12 months this year. Is that good enough for me? So you're not frustrated when your expectation is they show up for 12, once a month and they can't do it. So again, it's easier to set the bar high. You can take away things, but it's much harder, more difficult to add things. So takeaways from today, and then I'll be done. Set the expectations for the ideal, and you do that with a written ministry description. So that's the first thing. Set the expectations with the ideal. Inform, but don't overwhelm. Give the volunteer enough information to inform, but not overwhelm them. And that's where I think having that conversation, the second thing they deserve, to give a person and then the third thing is give the person a test drive. Oh, that's what that ministry description looks like played out in that situation. And then adjust your expectations and that person's commitment based on that person's situation. Remember, clarity creates confidence and reduces anxiety. So that's my spiel for today. And again, thank you for watching this whenever you do. I'll leave you with a question. All right, you're a team leader, or you're on a team, or you're building a team. Here's the question. What could you do today to improve your team's onboarding process? Okay, what are some takeaways from today, what I just presented, that you could do to improve your team's onboarding process? All right, I'm going to get my back over here and say a huge thank you for attending. And we'll see you. We have one more. So we'll see you next month for session number 6 of Leaders, Lunch, and Learn.